So let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like holding on to your faith is it's a constant battle, right? Like the world around you is so loud, so noisy, so distracting. And honestly, Gen Zs, I have a heart for Gen Zs. And I feel like they got the short end of the stick. So, because the world today is so loud, distracting, that like walking with God feels harder than ever.
So this is God Conversations. You're going to be hearing some things. You're going to be hearing us talk about.
Honestly, when you ask God for something, He comes through. Hi everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome. While you're flocking in, while you're joining in, I'm gonna quickly just put our thing on our status that we're up and running. So come on in, come in, come in, come in, come in. Where is the chat? Welcome, welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome. Come on in, come in with your water, come in with your Coke, your coffee. We have a lot to talk about today. Yes, we are live. We are ready. We are ready. We are so ready. Come on, come on, come on. You hear that? You see?
It's live.
You see it? You see it? Last week we had issues, so we had to use another platform, but it's okay. As long as God is glorified, then it's all right. Okay, so yay! Welcome to God Conversations, the My God Story series episode. I can't count. 6. I can count. Excitement is about to get the best of me. But again, welcome to God Conversations, where we're building a community of people that are God conscious, God centered. This is a space where, you know, um, for real talk about real faith, the struggles, the victories, everything in between. No matter where you are in your walk with God, these conversations are for you. They're here to challenge you, to encourage you, and help deepen your walk with God one conversation at a time. Because we're about growth. Nobody should be stagnant in God. We're supposed to be growing. We're supposed to be knowing more and more and more of God. And I find that the more that I know of God, the more that He reveals Himself to me, the bolder I get in my walk with Him, in my prayer, in how I worship, in how I deal with people. So let's dive in tonight. And tonight is one for the books. One for the books. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like holding on to your faith is it's a constant battle, right? Like the world around you is so loud, so noisy, so distracting. And honestly, Gen Zs, I have a heart for Gen Zs. And I feel like they got the short end of the stick. So, because the world today is so loud, distracting, that like walking with God feels harder than ever, right? If that is you, or you know someone like that, grab them, tag them, share this with them, let them come and hear this conversation, because we're welcoming back Sena, who's
Hello.
been here before and has already shared our heart. And the last time we spoke to Sena, we talked about how you build intimacy with God. Like, how do you build intimacy walking with God? Yes, so we're going to kind of start from that into it. So, Sena,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you for having me back.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure
Sena
to be
is a
here.
Gen Z believer.
Yes.
right? She's a believer. She was born in a Christian home. We heard about it. So maybe just remind our audience who you are, like for the new people that don't know you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Sena. I am a very proud daughter of the Most High.
Oh yeah.
Um, I grew up in church. My parents are both Christian, but it's been a journey learning how to understand God from the perspective of the God of my parents to the God of my
Mm,
own.
yeah.
And so I have been so blessed to have such a wonderful community, and for to have gone through this winding path, as I'm sure many people feel. Of there are some highs and there are some lows, but
Yeah.
being blessed have been to been able to know Christ for myself. So I've had
Right.
many different experiences, across my life, and proud to be here today. So thank you for
So
having me.
the questions are already coming in. How do you feel about being called a
Oh my
Gen
God,
Z?
I'm ready.
How,
Oh
how
man,
do you feel
hopefully,
about being
hopefully.
called a Gen Z? She said, how do you feel about being called a Gen Z?
See, I feel like I love it. I feel like it's one of those things that as much as people like make a big deal about it, I feel like
Mm.
it's something that helps us to better understand the different generations, because I think for the first time in a long time, um, there's a serious difference in how generations relate to each other. So I felt
Yeah.
like it's helped the class a little bit, but I'm proud. I own it. I can't change it.
Because you guys have your own language, you have your
Yeah.
own, like, I'm
Uh,
like,
yes.
talking to me sometimes, I'm like, what?
Yes. And it's very interesting too, being in the workplace. A lot of my coworkers are a little bit older than me. And
Yeah. And
there are
so
sometimes
they don't,
there are certain things
oh,
that I say and they're
God.
looking at me crazy.
Like,
They're like, "What are you
what?
saying?" So they're like, "I don't understand." So that I have to explain what I'm trying to say to them and then be mindful about the words that I'm using, that they may not get it. So
All these shorts, and it was this lawyer. It was a Gen Z lawyer, and she struts into court, and she says, "Excuse me, I'm so sorry, I'm late. I'm sorry, I'm late." She's late. She's late. It's a court. She's late.
yeah.
Her client is shaking in his boots. He's a boomer, right? And he said, "Oh my God, like you are my lawyer." And then she argues. She says, "No cap. My client, da 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 da, no cap."
Yeah.
No cap. And the client is so like he's like, I'm going to jail. This girl being my lawyer, I am going to jail. And at like 5 minutes, the judge says, the judge is also Gen Z. The judge says, explain to the boomer. And she goes, court dismissed. You won the case. And the man is looking like, what has happened? What? All
Um,
right. So let's segue into tonight's episode.
yes.
Again, I was on YouTube just before we came on, and I saw this shorts, and there was a question that was being asked about um, when will Gen Zs ever be able to find their way back to God?
Mm,
And that really, I don't know, that thought at my heart, like,
yeah.
wait, when did we even lose Gen Zs? Like, when did the church lose Gen Z? How did we lose them? Because honestly, if we really break it down, I feel like things that you lose sometimes are things you didn't really take care of,
Yeah.
right? Because if I look at it also, it sometimes, I know when you guys were younger, there were things that we were starting to see, and we're like, if this continues, I don't know how our kids are going to how they're going to fare in this world. But I
Yeah.
also know that one of the things that I held on to was, okay, teach your kids to know God,
Yeah.
right? Teach your kids to know God so
Yeah.
that they don't deviate. They won't deviate. Even if they meet whatever distraction they meet, their basic foundation, if it is Christ, it will be difficult for them to be led away. But I
Yeah.
also know that the world at that time that I'm talking about, this maybe 15 years ago, 17 years ago, but I also know that the world right now is so noisy.
Yes.
It is so noisy. So again, guys, this is episode 6 of the My God Story series, and we're talking about staying rooted in faith in a noisy and ever-changing world. So this one's for you. If you struggled with doubt, faced pressure to compromise your beliefs, or wondered how to truly stand firm in your faith, this one is for you. So Sena, um, again, we're keeping it real. We're vulnerable. No, you shared
Yeah.
some things in the last time you were here. That was like,
Yeah.
oh, right? You share
Yeah.
some skin. So we're here, we're vulnerable, we're transparent because I think everybody's life is a testimony for somebody else to see.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a testimony for somebody else to read, and
Yeah.
that they're like crumbs that lead the lost back to
Yeah.
Christ. Like, oh wait, if she went through that and she came out, I can go back to God. I don't have to run away from God. Because sometimes
Yeah.
I think Gen Zs are just running. They're running like because they don't understand it. So let's
Yeah.
dive into tonight's episode. What's your God story?
Yes.
What's
Yes.
your God story? Let's start with that
My
one.
God story. So I think my God story obviously starts very early. I had a lot of exposure um, to the faith. Um, and especially because when my mom was younger, when we were younger, she used to teach the youth ministry. So I grew up around seeing some of the like older teenagers, you know, coming to learn and understand Christ. So I feel like I had a good foundation, but I knew what the right things to say were, but for me to
Wow.
internalize them is different. It's like I now that as an adult, I understand the difference between head knowledge and heart knowledge, right?
Right.
Of like I knew all the verses, I could quote the Bible. Like I used to read the Bible like a history book. Like it was like a storybook to me. Like you would catch me in First Samuel, like reading about David. Like it was like
Wow.
fun, but it wasn't like it didn't correlate to me that that
True.
was like it was real, but it didn't really connect the spiritual
Connect right.
significance. So,
Right.
and it's also one of those things that like you can say the memory verses, and I felt like I also was rewarded because I knew, not because it was expressed.
Right.
Right. So I was the first to raise my hand, even I would go to Christian best girl Bible student. Like that was my motivation was I wanted the human approval that I was saying,
Mm,
doing the right things.
wow.
So I eventually, like I did, like I mentioned last time, I did a mission trip to Brazil, and that was my
Mm,
first real encounter with how
right.
real the experience of
Right.
God is. Like going out there to Brazil and being put in front of a crowd of people and being told you're going to pray for them, and they are expecting their healing tonight. And so for me,
Mm,
that was the first time in my life that I had truly experienced the power of God. And it also was an opportunity for me to receive some of the emotional healing for things I didn't even realize were going on in my life,
right. Right.
self-esteem, in terms of like feeling isolated, not feeling good enough, especially the community I grew up in as one of the only
Mm,
Black students in my classes,
yeah.
just feeling so
Wow.
inadequate and feeling like an outsider. But I feel like I really had my first real like confrontation when I went to
Mm,
college, because you're
mhm.
now taken out of that bubble and in
Yeah.
that safety net of you get rewarded because you're your memory versus to, oh, you're like the weird one that's like, you know, was Christian over there. And I think part of it was like when I got to college, it was being enticed by like, especially when you grow up in church, you feel like you're missing out almost. Like and especially it's compounded by social media and
Oh my God.
all of the fun that people are having. Like you see the lifestyle, you see the way that people are enjoying their lives,
Showing.
enjoying.
Showing.
And
Which are
so,
lies.
right.
Most
And
of the time are
so
lies.
and in the background, there's a lot of like bondage and emotional issues that are going on behind that.
Mm.
And so like seeing that, I was like, oh, okay, let me try it out a little bit, see what's going on. And so that's where I think some of the like shifting away from God's
Oh,
presence. And I think
yeah.
also even for me in high school, I remember we had done True Love Waits actually.
Mm,
And in Agape, which for those who may not know, it was like a
right.
weekend
Promise ring,
course
something.
where, and then at the end you do promise ring. So I was serious about wearing my promise ring. I wore it to school and everybody's like, "What you got on? Like, who put on your wedding ring? You're like 16." My friends are like, "You're never gonna make it. That's never gonna happen." And so
Oh
for
my
me,
God.
being surrounded
Oh,
by that and hearing that, like of like you're crazy for thinking that,
yeah.
it starts to sink into your head, especially if you don't. if you're not like, again, if you don't have that heart encounter
Yeah.
with God. And
Yes.
so it
Oh.
wasn't until actually after college that I like realized actually how broken I was. I went to school and I left God's presence and I went and picked up
Oh
all
my
the pen
God.
and was just so emotionally downcast. Like I couldn't even accept a single compliment. Like you would compliment me and I'd be like, you're like literally lying to me. And so because of that, like it was just like at some point, and then God was like, all right, enough. Come back home.
Mm.
So it was during that journey of like, I was like, I'm tired of like hating myself so much. I'm tired of this. Like people tell me things and I can't even accept it. And it was that started that journey of like God really starting to unravel and undo and really starting to build a real relationship
Right.
with God. And
Right.
so that's kind of what's led to this today of like that, having experiencing the world a little bit and how awful and terrible and seeing even some of my peers and how much they were emotionally broken that
Broken.
I wanted to
Mm.
like, hey,
Oh
life
wow.
is worth it. So
I think we all go through that phase, no matter what generation you are, Gen Z, Boomer, X, Millennial. I think everybody has gone through that phase where you feel like you're hiding the real you, because if
yeah,
anybody could see the real you, they would see how broken you are,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Especially in the church.
yeah,
A lot of us were broke. I wouldn't say I'm broke. Nah, I was broken, right? So the Gladys that you see today is the healed Gladys. And I'm
yeah,
talking about mentally broken, emotionally broken, drained,
yeah,
right? But I was still in church.
yeah,
I
yes,
was still in church. I was still raising up the hand. I was still leading worship. And it's like until you get that heart to heart connection,
yes,
the healing doesn't even start. And I remember there were some that's why I tell people sometimes you have to be bold to pray some really dangerous prayers. And one of those dangerous prayers for me was, Lord, expose the things that I'm hiding. Because
yeah,
I also heard recently about how don't cover what is festering.
yes,
Because things that fester, wounds, for example, after a while they start smelling, they can get infected, and it
yeah,
can go into your and damage other things in your body, right? So it's very, very important for a Christian to really, and honestly, if you're watching this today and you don't know, you think you're okay. I heard someone say, if you keep saying you're okay, you're not okay.
yeah, yeah,
Right? So maybe you need to pray that prayer. Lord, expose the thing. Like expose. I know one of the prayers I prayed for myself was expose me to me. Let me
yeah,
see me. Let me
yes,
see the
yeah,
real me. And you
yeah,
know what I saw? I saw pride. I saw jealousy. I saw anger. I saw, and it was then my healing truly started, because I could
yeah,
say, okay, Lord, I'm throwing myself at you because I don't want to go to hell.
yes,
What
yes,
would it look like? We get to heaven, people can't see me. They say, where is God? Is she's in hell? But she was leading worship. What happened?
yes,
You
yeah.
know? So if someone was to ask you, why are you still a Christian in today's world?
Mm,
Like with all the craziness that's going around,
yes.
what would you say to them? Why are you still a Christian today?
Yes. I would say the biggest reason is it's just like peace of knowing that I am redeemed.
Mm.
Because I think for me as a person, I'm very much like a perfectionist. And one
Mhm.
thing I really struggled with was feeling like I have to earn everything. Like every time you make a mistake or every time I make a mistake, I would just beat myself up. Like I'm not good enough. It's just like, and it's just like the enemy like really played with my mind in that way. And so I think the biggest thing is knowing that like God loved me just
Oh,
as I am. He
yes.
loved me
Yeah.
enough to want to redeem me. I think it
Right.
was uh Ephesians 2 verses 4 to 6. But God is so rich in mercy and he loves us so much that even though we were dead because of our sins, he gave us life
Mm.
when he raised Christ from the dead. So we were still sinning and Christ went and
Still, was
redeemed
still
us.
loving us.
He still loved us. And I think for
Yeah.
me, that transformed my entire walk with God. It's just like, and there's just such like a peace and a joy and
Mm.
rest that you have knowing that your life, your destiny, who you are
Is
is in
right.
God's hands. It,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
takes that pressure off of you. It takes
It's
that
freeing.
that strain of like, I have to figure this out for myself. I have to do it for myself because it's like, life is tough, and
Mm.
I'm still early in my life, so I'm sure there's God has got lots more in store for me in the future,
I
but
know.
it's too life is too heavy of a lift to do it on your own, and
Oh
just
my God.
salvation, the message of salvation is really why I'm still
Right.
in.
I know. So, when you said that you are such a perfectionist that when you make mistakes, you're so like you beat yourself up.
Yeah,
I realized something the other day, and something had happened, and this person, I mean, they were they were
yeah,
wrecked from crying,
yeah,
because they never make mistakes.
yeah,
So as I'm as I'm watching them, it just dawned on me that there was a time when I was like that. I
yeah,
didn't like making mistakes. And when I made mistakes, I would go into like this hole, almost like depressed, like
yeah,
me, like a whole me can make that kind of mistake.
yeah,
You know what came to me? People who don't give themselves grace, they find it difficult to give anybody grace
yeah, yeah,
because you feel like you should not be making this kind of mistake. But so because that's how you treat yourself.
yes,
You
yes,
can't treat people better than you will treat yourself.
yeah,
So that was the one thing that if you don't know how to give grace, if you don't give grace, if you don't give yourself grace, like we all make excuses. Okay, let it go. It's an excuse. What's our learn? Because that was my flip from, okay, I made this mistake. What is the lesson?
yeah,
What am I learning from this so that I don't do it? I don't make that same mistake again, right? And when I even look at this now, I want to kind of relate it to people who say, "Oh, I sinned, and because I sinned, I now closed off. Like God doesn't
yeah.
love me anymore. He does." Listen, the blood of Jesus did the work.
That's it. It's already
So
paid for.
if you fall, all you need to repent. But do yourself one better. And I always use this analogy. Say someone who is dealing with porn, sin,
Yeah,
pornography. What are the things, and I've said this to so many people over time that I counsel, right? What is the thing? What is the trigger? Because there is a
yeah.
trigger.
There's a
And
deeper
I
root.
remember, yeah, I remember your conversation the last time when you said you stopped watching Bridgerton. What's that thing?
Yes.
You know why I never watched it? Because I never heard anything wholesome.
Mm,
I never I never heard anything wholesome. And anytime I would see like snippets, it was always sexual in nature.
yeah,
I know my mind.
yeah,
I know how my mind works. And I wasn't going to subject myself to
to
that.
that. Yeah,
Because it would be me closing my eyes and I'm seeing it.
yeah,
So for me to not go through all that pressure, I just stay away.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I just stay away.
yeah. It's definitely real, um, and I think that's part of why so many people are challenged, especially in the mental health space. There's been so many conversations about it, and I think it's important to understand. But a lot of that anxiety and
Mm,
those challenges come from that pressure that we put on ourselves, and
yeah.
even worse, the lies that the enemy like whispers in
Ah,
the back of your head. That like, when you think about people, like especially like I had a friend that had gone through like an anxiety attack, and it was kind of my first time experiencing that, and seeing it just like spiral and spiral and spiral. I think it was something simple like she couldn't finish packing her stuff up, but and she was moving out with her roommate, and her roommate had to finish packing up, and her roommate had just sent her a small text message. And then the
mm,
way that her mind just went out of control, like she hates me. I had a party planned, 2 weeks from now, and just like, and now she's upset because of that, and now because I didn't finish. And it was like
and
something
it
that
just
seemed
keeps
so
escalating, right?
minuscule, like it just escalated in her mind. Um, and it's just like those small triggers, like you're saying, it just like, and if you're not grounded in the word,
Oh my God.
like that's
That
where that one thing can
exactly.
just spiral out
It-
of control in your mind, right? So
my God. I mean, and think about, I'm sure even with your friend, it didn't start like it's things that are built up.
yes,
It's things that are built up. like you said, life is pressure on its own.
Yeah.
So for you to now help put all those things in there.
Yeah.
So the culture today also, like, is always shouting something. Like, social media is also always shouting something: success, self, instant gratification. If you do this, you get this. I did this in 3 months. I did that in 4 months. Oh, you can be. How do you tune out the noise and just like stay locked on Jesus, locked in on Jesus?
Yeah.
How, how do you tune out that noise?
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that because earlier this year during the 21-day fast, I actually I like deleted the apps. I didn't delete the accounts. I deleted all of my social media, like
Oh
Facebook,
wow.
Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn at some point had to go. Even like WhatsApp
Because
status.
even LinkedIn is becoming like,
I
even
I'm a LinkedIn warrior, unfortunately. I'm on LinkedIn entirely too much. There's actually no reason for me to be on LinkedIn as much as I am. Um, but I had to do that for myself because it, like, got to a point and, like, social media is very dangerous, and I feel like so I'll finish the first part of the story, but the reason I had to do that was to recenter myself, right? Like,
Mm,
I had to turn everything off so that and I spent those 3 weeks reading the Bible, reading the Word. I mean, I bought a notebook, and I would
mm.
sit down, and every day I
Oh
would read a
my,
chapter
oh,
from a
those
book,
are
I would
just,
write it down, and I had to literally reset, recalibrate my brain on the truth
wow. Mm.
because now that I've done that, and honestly, I might do it again soon, it's like it's actually really scary how twisted the doctrine has become on social media. Like, I'll literally go on people's, like, comments, and they'll put a Bible verse. You go and look it up, the verse that they quoted is not the verse in the actual word.
Out of context.
It's, like, either out of context or it's actually wrong, like, it's literally a lie. Like, I saw this one where if she was like, Proverbs something, something, and she was like, "Yeah, if he wanted to, he would." Like, it was just, like but the way that it sounded like it would be biblically written. It was crazy, and I went and I was like in the comments, I was like, "Girl, you're literally lying. This is what it actually says." But if you actually did like, if I hadn't taken the time to step away and, like, refocus myself, I think I would have missed it. So that was one of the biggest things I had to do was just, like, take some time to actually relearn, and I know there's this other TikToker that his whole goal is, like, to help people realize how biblically illiterate they are, and
Oh
so for
my
me,
God.
that's the
Listen.
thing is, like, actually going back and, like, for every time I watch something, I have to go look at the verses myself. I have to go and reread it myself, like,
Right.
I don't just take anything face value. I have to go back and validate the information because if you don't, you have no idea what you're consuming. Um, and at the end of the day, I've also come to learn that, like, the Bible is really the guide. So even
That's
though
it.
there's, like, obviously there is value to, like, to getting that formalized education, right, about how to be successful in a certain area and building technical depth in something, but ultimately
Mm,
the Bible is the guide. So Proverbs and Ecclesiastes are my best friend now. I actually bought a
mm,
devotional that each day
mm.
goes through a verse in Proverbs. And
Yes.
so for me, like, it's just becoming like it's funny because it sounds so simple. It's always like read the Bible, pray. Like, it's always like the same three or four things that people always say for their Christian walk. But, like, once you actually really
Do
do it,
it.
that's when you understand what it
Yeah.
means. So I
Right.
feel like as challenging as that was to step away from socials, it was probably one of the best things I think I've done
Best thing to
so
do.
far in my life.
And I feel like at that time also you could look at it as you were decluttering,
Yes.
right? You were
Yes.
decluttering because I feel like that's something that needs to be done. Um, Social media, honestly, to me, it has its uses, but I also feel like it pulls people in. So for me, because of the podcast, I come, I post, but now I'm concentrating more on the YouTube channel because we need to grow there. And thank you everyone that has subscribed. I we looked and we had gained about, I think, 24 new
Oh,
subscribers
that's
in the
awesome.
last 2 weeks. So keep it coming, keep sharing. Thank you. Keep subscribing, keep tagging your friends, keep telling your friends about God Conversations, because again, this is where we help you deepen your walk with God one conversation at a time. And talking about social media, I remember a time I would get on. and I would be on hours. But at the end of the night, I was going to bed depressed
Yeah.
because I was looking at this person is the same age as me. How come? Look at how much they say is in their bank account.
Yes.
Look at this one, and then one day it was just like, okay, you're going to have to do something. So it didn't take too long for me to do it, but I just reduced how long. And it was actually Nife that made me. She said, Mom,
Right.
put a timer.
Yeah.
And once you do it, so on Instagram now, I think it's like an hour.
Mm.
It's like an hour to the point that while we were doing the worship pop up yesterday, my thing went off because I had reached. It said you had
Your
reached
limit.
your
Yeah.
1 hour, so it went off. So that's how I manage it. So I
Yeah.
think that to your point of dialing things back, deleting stuff and all that. For someone, if you like, if you even if you want to do it, you want to do it gradually, set
Yes.
timers.
Yes.
And when it says your time is up, your time is up. Get
Yeah.
off.
Yes.
Get off.
And
And
something
go ahead.
I was going to say something that I also found was really helpful was finding maybe not like in some instances maybe not shutting down but finding alternates. So for me, I'm a big TV show person. I love my TV
Mhm.
shows like
Right.
Gordon Ramsay every day.
Mhm.
But I found I'm a big Gordon. I can't help myself.
I'm
Like
still waiting to eat your mac and cheese.
it's so good. What I actually did instead was found alternatives. So I
Mhm.
started watching other content. So like
Right.
Mildred and Kingsley Okonkwo, like I started watching their content, or
Mhm.
like Stephanie Ike Okafor. Like I started
Right.
finding
Right.
people that like
Right.
I actually
Right.
enjoyed watching that were like
Right.
that had really good content, or
Content. Right.
2018.
Right.
Yeah, or
Right.
like on TikTok, I found creators that I had, done my research, listened to watch their videos, validated what they were saying, and then started to
Mhm.
watch their content instead. So,
Right.
like for me, even though I like in some instances was difficult to shut it down, then find things that
Right.
are actually going to spiritually feed you if
Right.
it's difficult to say no altogether.
Mhm. So my thing now also is, so I found, I think in different seasons of my life, the Lord will highlight like a particular person that
Yeah.
I would listen to. So I know in seasons it was Apostle Selman,
Yeah.
Joshua Selman,
Yes.
and then at one point it was Stephanie K. At one point it was right now it's actually Femi Lazarus, a guy called Apostle
Mhm.
Femi Lazarus. Like at least I listen to, like, because I feel like this guy is living. It's almost like his experiences when he talks is almost like mine. So
Yeah.
I kind of listen to him a lot. Like I join when there's prayers, I join, and they help me. Like they keep
Yeah.
me grounded. Now, other things on YouTube that I would watch would be because you have to also, there's so many things on YouTube also, and too much of something can be dangerous to you,
Yeah.
right? So on the spiritual side, I have the things that I listen to, but I also love listening to um these revenge stories. Revenge stories about, and it could be family members who would, they don't pay attention to a particular person, and they're always mocking them and putting them down, but this particular person is actually the richest one out of them, but because they don't know, they
Yeah.
do things. So I like it, but it's not video. It's just audio. So I like to learn. I'm like, what is happening here?
Right. Is
Like,
real
what?
life.
How can you do that? Like there was one I listened to today. The lady was an artist, but her auntie thought that it was just her auntie called it doodling. So she
Mm,
had no respect for her, no respect whatsoever. Like she was wasting her life away and blah blah blah. Come to find out, this woman was sick, had cancer, and there was no money for her treatment. Guess who the money came from?
wow.
The doodler,
Very
the
same
one
person.
who was doodling. The
Yeah.
first 20,000 for her treatment came from the one who she didn't think was. So I say this to say that there are things, like you say, alternatives that you can put in that will boost you spiritually,
Yeah.
but also mentally. You're looking for mental stimulation, you can find other things also, like business
Yeah.
stuff if you're a business person.
Yes, yeah.
Um, yeah. So, man, this world, I sometimes I feel sorry for Gen Z, but sometimes I'm like, I think they can hold it.
Yeah,
I
and
think they're holding their own. The only problem is sometimes they're holding it in the wrong way,
yeah, and
right?
I think as a generation too, like, as much as there's I think it's almost like both sides is that, I think also as a generation, we're very vocal and we're not afraid to have challenging conversations, and I think that that's something that can be really powerful is,
Mm,
I think some of the older generations, when they encounter challenges or are upset with how things are, maybe in the way that the church is run, other generations would just accept it and move on. But Gen Z is willing to have those
they
challenging
want to, right,
conversations. They want to say, let's sit down and let's talk about this. And as long as there's that openness to understanding and hearing the conversations, I think
right.
we're willing to have the
Mm,
discussions that need to be had. And I think in having those conversations, that's also where you can have the opportunity to expose those lies, right? And
mm.
saying like, hey, maybe these are areas that we can do
We
things
need to,
different, we can do things better, we can leverage
right,
technology, we can bring a fresh approach. And then there are also areas where it's like, no, that's not what the Bible says. But you don't if you're quiet, then you don't have those discussions. So I think there's a lot of good space. And I think the as a generation in general, respect is something, as long as that opinion and that discussion is respected, I think that there's definitely opportunity to have good conversations about, what's true, what's not, what
right.
can we do better. So
Have you ever come across somebody who believed in, the new age stuff?
yeah. Yeah, in college, yes. Yes, indeed. It's yeah.
I
Yes, we have.
I had one. I'm like, what? Where? But this one was even like a church. So there are
Oh,
people, right? There are people that even believed it. And there's a girl I follow on YouTube. I forget her name now. Melissa somebody. She was new age. So now she just exposes. She says it's a very thin line between Christian, born again Christian,
yeah,
Christ is my firm foundation Christian, and the new age, because the beliefs are it's a very thin line, very, very thin.
yeah.
So if you don't know, to your point, if you don't know to, you hear someone say something, and my thing, my red flag is always if you say something and my eyes kind of glaze over, like
Like, what? Yeah,
the what was that? I don't what I will. So I think people need to listen to sermon, whether you're in church, wherever you are, listen to sermons with the intention of understanding what it is that they're talking about, what it
yeah,
is. Because recently I also heard about how someone was talking about witchcraft in the church, like a cult-like thing
yeah,
inside church.
yes,
Right? And these are churches that we all know. I'm not going to mention names. I don't want to be sued. But these are churches that you're like, oh, they've been around for so long that, and then you now see what's a why? Like, where is that in the Bible? Where is that in the Bible? So
yes,
let's segue to something I always find interesting. Let's talk friendships.
yes, yeah.
How do you find and keep friends
Mm.
who actually push you towards Jesus? I heard something from her name is, well, as short for DDK.
Yes, yep,
Yeah. She said that if you have friends and all you guys talk about is the latest shoe that you bought, the latest bag that you bought, and you don't talk scripture, you don't talk Jesus, you don't talk prayer. There's no, oh, let's text, there's something wrong, and oh, there's no, oh, Jesus, that there's no mention of Jesus in your conversations.
yes.
We need to check your faith.
Have a yeah conversation. Yeah.
So what is that like? How do you keep friends that push you towards Jesus?
Mm.
Because not everybody in church, right, will
Yes,
push you towards Jesus.
yes,
Not everybody has that heart to heart with Jesus yet,
yeah.
for them to know that part of their role is to be pushing you towards Jesus.
Christ, yeah,
There's no ride or die in. There's no right or
Yes.
that there's no right or die. It's Jesus. It's Jesus' way or
Yeah.
no way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's something that I'm still learning myself.
Mhm.
I think the biggest thing is number one is people who are not afraid to, when you're doing something or you're saying something or thinking a certain way that doesn't align with what God is saying, people who are not afraid to push back.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, it's often very easy to want to gravitate towards people who will just validate you, right? And
Mhm.
I know that I have had those friends in the past. I'll be like, "Yeah, girl, it's okay. Like, everybody has a bad day. Like, it's fine." But people who will like, as soon as you start to feel that way, will challenge you and say, "No,
Right.
this is
What's going on? Yeah.
what's going on. Like, this is what
Yeah.
Scripture says. This is what the Bible
Mhm.
says." But I feel like also part of it, another thing too, is just discernment of understanding what season people are in. And sometimes, especially for me, I often like once I have a friend, like I'm loyal, we're locked in. But are certain times that people are going through their own challenges, and there's seasons where maybe they're not meant to support you through what you're going through, or maybe
Mm.
you're meant to support them through what they're going through.
Then I was about to say that.
Understanding that like different friendships evolve in different seasons, and I think that's been the biggest lesson for myself is like,
Mhm.
maybe someone is really solid in one season, and that's who
And
you take
they're struggling in another
in
season,
another
and
season
they
where
may need you.
exactly. And so
Right.
understanding that, and then the other thing too I think that's important is, and I'm again learning, is oftentimes we're expecting people to be something to us that we are not to them. If you're not if you're not that support for someone, if someone calls you or texts you and says, "I'm going through this," and you're like, "Oh, that's awkward. Like, I don't know. I'm going through my own thing too." How do you expect someone to do the same for you? And so
Mhm.
it's important to like as you're developing and growing to be that friend that pushes someone towards Christ. And then that way it's like iron sharpens iron, right? So if
Right.
you're not iron, how can they sharpen
You
you?
can't be
And vice
sharpened, and
versa,
you won't sharpen anyone.
has to be symbiotic. And so that's one thing I think that, especially like, I often hear people say, I'm just going to protect my peace, like, da, da, da. Like there's that, not that desire for accountability. And so you have to be willing to have those conversations in both directions,
Right.
from you and to you.
Right. But I mean, I'm just gonna so even if we looked at the that conversation or that sentence of I'm just going to protect my peace, it could be coming from someone where they have tried to support
Yes. Yes.
and it's not happening. Like the
Yes.
person isn't getting it. So rather than pulling and tugging and
Yes.
and there's no change, then okay, I'm just gonna leave it alone.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not. But to your point, because I something happened with me and a friend of mine years
Mhm.
ago that it literally took us taking a break of about three
Yes.
years from each
Yeah.
other. That now we're now good, really, really good
Good.
friends now. Like we actually have a community of a WhatsApp chat with the five of us,
Yes.
right? We were all friends when we first came into the country when nobody knew how
Mhm.
America was going to work for them. Everybody was trying to get through school. We were all having kids. And
Yeah.
so life was just happening with everybody. But then we settled into this thing where we always told each other things, right? If things was
Yeah.
going on, we always said, we always told. Then I made a decision and they got mad because I didn't tell them,
Mm.
right? So it
Yeah.
was in that season of why do I need to tell you, right? I must admit I had this stubborn streak where I said, why do
Mhm.
I need to tell you? Like, who are you now,
Yeah.
right? So I got petty and we had a break of I'm telling you, 3 to 3.5 years to the
Yeah.
point where I even missed her 40th birthday,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
And it was so painful for her because it was like she didn't understand how we got to this point.
That point. Yeah.
But the thing is, things were also there, like things were
Yeah.
festering that we did not pay attention
Address.
to.
Yeah.
So then it just the only other thing to do was to just implode, like, okay,
Yeah.
everybody to your corners and go figure out your life and
Yeah.
then come back again.
Yes.
And
Yes.
now we're good. So sometimes I always tell people, maybe this season, and something I've also come to understand is friendships, sometimes it's in seasons.
Yes, yes, yeah,
It's in seasons. And what happens is people try to hold on to a friendship that's supposed to be like a
yeah,
3 months thing, and you're
yes,
dragging it out three years into it.
yes,
And then it becomes, oh, she doesn't care about the same thing that I care about.
yes,
Well, maybe you had an assignment. God gave you an assignment in her life for 3 months. You've extended that into 3 years to the point now it's not hatred, but it's a bitterness that has now
form.
started
Yeah,
because they're not paying attention to me the way that they were paying
yeah,
attention to me before. And
yeah,
I had to learn that in a very, very crazy way. It was like the Holy Spirit said, but what I sent you to do in our life, it's done.
yes, yeah,
It's
yeah,
done. Stop trying to hold on to, because when you hold on to, that's why you get easily hurt. You find out that something happened to them, you're the last one to know.
yes,
Now your feelings are now your feelings are hurt, and it's
yes,
like,
yeah,
why didn't I know? And but we just have to, and to your point, sometimes when you think too highly, the position that you think you are in that person's life, you may think you are here, but you're here.
yeah,
And you got to be able to deal with it. You
yeah,
have to be able to deal with it. Just recognize your role in their lives in
yeah,
the season
yeah,
and move on.
when it's time.
Like, move on. It's not that crazy, right?
Yep,
Um so do you have a mentor? Like,
yeah,
do you have a mentor?
yes, I have lots of mentors. They know who they are.
Right?
I've surrounded
And
myself
so
with
you're
mentors.
surrounded. So you have a community of support,
Yes, I do.
right?
Yes, I do.
That's how I would look at it. You have a community of support. So what do you say to someone who does not, because some people are like, oh, I don't like people knowing my business. I no, I just want to be, I want to be alone. I don't, what do you say to someone like that? What is the benefit of having mentors? And to your point, you say that it's for different things, right?
Yes.
Because one person, somebody might not be strong
Yeah,
in a certain
area.
place that you want, that you need them to
Yeah,
be. So what is the benefit of having mentors
yes. I
as a
have
young Christian woman?
Yes, I have had, and I think so. I think the first thing is that understanding that, um, number one, understanding yourself. And I think one of the biggest prayers I prayed was like Psalm 139, was like 23 to 24, is like, search me, O Lord, know my
Mm,
thoughts, test me. So I think that was the first prayer I prayed of like, God, where are the gaps in my life? Where are the areas that I need
mm,
support?
mm,
And so once God started to reveal that to me, I'm like, okay, who are the people around me that can help support me on that journey? And then having a very intentional conversation around, like, hey, I need some support. So one is definitely encouragement. I feel like the mentors in my life have been very encouraging to me, helping me to see things in myself that I even don't see, or things that
yeah.
I don't recognize, because they're getting that outside opinion. Obviously, and of course, they also have to be people who they themselves are strong in the faith. Like you can't, and
Listen.
and
Hmm.
and it depends, right? Because I know even professionally, right, there are people that are like, it's strictly like for professional development. So
Right.
I won't say that like, oh, if there's not someone that's like specifically 100%, like there are some certain contexts where, you have that conversation with God about what the criteria is.
Hmm.
But definitely people who speak into my life are definitely people who are women of faith.
Right.
Um, I think the third thing is just the wisdom that comes from speaking to someone who has already walked the journey. That has been, there are so many things that I would have made mistakes and it would have taken me 10 times as long if I
Right.
um, hadn't had those mentors in my life
Hmm.
to help guide me through that. And honestly, number four is just accountability. And accountability not just from your peers, because as peers, like my friends, like and we're all in the same place. We're all trying to figure it out. Sometimes it's blind. Like they're giving me advice.
None of you have figured it out.
Yeah, like we haven't figured it out. And so having someone who can help hold me accountable to what I am saying I'm supposed to do,
Right.
that's been the biggest thing. I think, I'll be vulnerable here for a second. I think one of
Mhm.
the areas in my life that I've recognized I needed mentors and support and accountability was actually in dating. And
Mm.
having someone to say like, okay, I've like, met someone, let's bounce ideas. Like, what do you think?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
this is what I'm seeing. This is what they're saying. Like, is this a flag? Is this not a flag? Like,
Right.
what is
Red flags, red flag.
what does the Bible say about it? Because like, especially
Yeah.
in that area, it's easy
Yeah.
to get blind. You
Right.
just start talking to someone, you get so excited, and then you start
Mhm.
missing things. And so,
Right.
like, it made me realize that I needed people who could speak into my life, who could hold me
Right.
accountable, who can encourage me, who could and honestly praying with me. So many
Right.
of them have been so great and like backing me up in prayer and keeping me in prayer because that's such a big thing. So I think for anyone who's afraid of the vulnerability, I would say the thing that's even worse is to struggle alone. Because for anyone who has struggled alone, you know how much more difficult and terrifying and scary, and that's where the enemy really starts to play with your mind. And so
Yeah.
having those mentors in your life, they help to recalibrate, reset, and get you going in the right direction. So I've always been such a big proponent for mentors because they have really helped having that community has really helped shape my life. And like I mentioned before, when I was younger and doing True Love Waits and feeling really isolated around friends who didn't get it, and then now contrasting to having so many amazing, like, strong Christian women who understand the importance of what we're doing, I can tell you
Right.
there's a very big difference in how I'm approaching that area of my life now as opposed to when I was a teenager.
Wow. Sana, you said a whole lot. A whole lot. All right. So I have one last question for
Yeah.
you. And because again, so I want to remind everybody again, God Conversations, we're about growth in God. We're about staying God conscious, God aware, and it's a daily thing, it's a daily surrender, right? So for you, what does it look like living to live for Jesus daily? Not just in church, but in real life. And I always tell people because I cannot fathom that you will be one way in church and one way outside church. I
Yeah.
don't it's not That's not the way it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
And so I always and one of the biggest validation my kids have ever given me was they were really young. They were like maybe 13, 14, and they said to me, I believe it was Nife. Fife was standing by her side. He said to her, Mom, you're the same in church and at home. The same over the top is the same, and when you are quiet is the same. We see the same thing.
Yeah.
That's why it's easy to actually follow you and follow God. I want to know this God,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So for you, and I know that's what you see because I know my friend, right?
Yeah.
I know G-Force. So
Yes.
so for you as a young Christian woman, what does it look like to live for Jesus daily?
Mm. I think, well, the first thing is knowing and prioritizing my time with Christ, and making sure that that's something that I do, however that looks like. And especially in this season of my life where I have the opportunity to really focus in is something I choose to do daily. And one of the things that I think God had me do was to have my core verses that I pray over myself every day. So
Yeah.
it's like First John 3 verse 1. It's like I mentioned, Ephesians 3:17 to 19,
Mhm.
Ephesians 2, 4 to 6, like Matthew 11, 28 to 30, like Psalm 139, 119, 9 to 11. Like the
Mhm.
list goes on. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
it's like making sure that there's not a day goes by that I don't read those verses because that's what helps center me every single day. I think the other thing is not being afraid to show the Christ in you. I think that's something that has taken me time to get
Mhm.
used to. And I think it's made such a big difference is because oftentimes people are afraid that they'll be rejected if they show the Christ in them. Right. So
Yeah.
rather than like suppressing it a little bit and trying to fit in, just be
That's it.
like people are like,
Fit in with the culture.
why are you so happy all the time? Like I go to work and I'm excited. I'm smiling. I'm like, hey guys. And they're like, why are you so happy? And I'm like, "Okay." I was like, I'm blessed. I,
I know.
I'm
Wow.
surprised by how well received that is. And
Yeah.
I feel like I found the more areas of my life that I gave in surrender and
Mhm.
being unapologetically like excited and willing to share Christ with other people, it made it easier. I felt free to just like I felt like I didn't have to split myself in different ways because I showed the how much and I tell people about how much Christ has changed my life. And so like especially I even found it started like whenever my coworkers would tell me they're going through something difficult, just be like, "Can I pray for you?" And
Mm.
you'd be surprised how many people say yes and how it even changes their view of you. So that was a
Mm.
fear that I think I had to get over that has really changed my life. And then I think the third biggest thing is knowing that like whatever plans I have for myself, what God has is even greater and learning to
Greater.
be okay with not being sure of what the next step is and just saying,
Mm.
"Okay, God, this is what we're doing." And so I'm going along with it. You
Right.
know, the plans that He has for you are
Far
to
better.
prosper and not to harm you. And hold on,
Mm.
let me actually open up because I feel like the verse after that was very, I think it challenged me. So it says, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They're plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a hope and if you
True,
feel a
true.
future and a hope, in those days when you pray, I will listen. If you look for me
Wow.
wholeheartedly, you will find me, and I will
Wow.
be found by you. And so I felt like when I started to really like the goal is not just about the plans God has for you; it's about seeking Him and finding Him. And so that also became my daily focus. Was not like I need to hustle, I need to get this, that, the third. It's just I just want to look for Christ, and you'll be surprised by how you find Him. I mean, I'll give a very small example as the last thing is it sounds very like small, but I have been big on my Bible streak on my Bible. Like I don't want a single day to go by that I haven't opened my app
Anyway,
at least a verse, no matter how busy the day was. And
yeah.
I for some reason it seemed like I lost my streak. It went
Oh,
up and it was at 1, and I was like, "What happened that day?" But I was like, "You know what, God? I'm going back to the drawing board. It doesn't matter.
mhm.
I wanna seek you. I'm gonna start again. I'm gonna start reading." And then magically yesterday, I looked at it and the streak was back.
Your streak was back.
It was
Come
back.
on,
So
man. Come on now.
it sounds very small, but it's just like that intentionality and that focus of like, I'm
Yeah,
seeking God, and that's it.
yeah.
So,
Great. So I lied. I have one more. One
yes.
more. One more. One more. So if you could sum up your relationship with God in one word right now, what would that word be and why?
Ooh, one word. Um, I'd say like either full and or overflowing. Um, I feel that now that I have really allowed myself to focus in on Christ, I feel like it's just like before I used to, I'm very much like a giver. So I love to give to people. I love to give my time, my energy. And I was just
Mm.
always like I just felt empty. Like I was just like I come back from the end of my day and I'm like exhausted emotionally. And now that I've like really focused on like knowing Jesus and allowing him to really pour into me,
Mm.
my life has been so much fuller. Like I've
Wow.
really begun to experience the joy of the Lord. Um, and like I keep mentioning that Ephesians 19, but it says, and may you have the power to understand as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is. That
Love.
you experience the love of Christ.
Yeah.
So it is too great to fully understand. And then you will be made complete with all the fullness and the life and power that comes from God. And a different translation says you'll be overflowing. And so that's my focus is just God, continue to help me experience your love in every dimension. And that's where that overflow came. So now I get to
Mhm.
love on people with the overflowing
So,
of the
come on.
love that God has for me as opposed to the emptiness. So,
Wow. Now, this was a wholesome conversation.
yes.
This is what I had in my head when I thought of you coming today. So, Sena, thank you so
Yes.
much for all the gems and the nuggets that you have dropped. And again, if you missed this, go watch it again. Even if you're online with us again now, go watch it again. Okay, watch it again. There's so many things that Sena said here. And if you have young friends, you have daughters, you have sons, have them watch it, send it to them, and don't forget to subscribe. Help us share this, help us grow. We have gone over the 100 subscribers.
Yes.
Thank God for that. We were stuck in 84 for so long. I was like, what's going on? But you know what? God is intentional about you, right? God is intentional about you. And we're going to keep having these conversations that are going to push you more and more towards God, towards Christ, because we're helping you deep in your walk with God, one conversation at a time. I will see you next week, and we
Yes.
have another great guest coming on. Thanks for joining us tonight, and everybody stay blessed and keep growing in the Lord.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.